welcome to a new deep dive.
Yeah, right.
You've brought us a really fascinating overview of CBD oil.
Yeah.
And all the different ways it might impact health.
Yeah.
So we're going to really dig into what we think are some of the biggest takeaways from this information you provide.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, one of the things that's really interesting about this topic is that there is so much information out there about CBD oil now. And I think it really speaks to the growing interest what people have in more natural approaches to wellness.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to look at, everything from how CBD interacts with the body to its legal status to the different types of products that are available. And then dive into some of the areas where it's showing potential benefits.
Yeah, and we've got a lot to cover.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at potential applications for pain management, anxiety, sleep, inflammation, skin health, heart health, digestive health, neurological disorders, addiction recovery, women's health fitness recovery, and even applications for pets.
Wow.
So quite a landscape to traverse.
It is, yeah.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Like when we say CBD, what exactly are we talking about?
So CBD stands for cannabidiol.
Okay.
And it's a naturally occurring compound that's found in the cannabis plant. Now, a really important distinction to make right from the start is that CBD is not psychoactive. Unlike THC, which is another well-known compound found in cannabis, CBD doesn't produce that high that's often associated with marijuana use.
So that's really important for people to understand
it is
right off the bat that these are two very different things, even though they come from the same plant. So why is that? What makes them so different in their effects?
So the difference lies in how these molecules interact with our bodies. Specifically with a system called the endocannabinoid system. THC directly binds to receptors in the brain called CB1 receptors. You can kind of think of it like a key fitting into a lock. And when THC binds to these receptors, it triggers a very specific effect, which is that psychoactive high. CBD, on the other hand, has a much more indirect influence on the endocannabinoid system. Instead of directly binding to those same CB1 receptors, it modulates their activity. And it can also affect other components of the endocannabinoid system, leading to therapeutic benefits without causing that altered state of mind.
So it's more about, I guess, fine-tuning the system rather than directly activating it. The same way that THC does.
That's a good way to put it.
And given that it is derived from cannabis, I think the legal status is a question that a lot of people have. CBD is everywhere now. But is it actually legal everywhere?
So the legal status of CBD can be a little bit tricky.
In the United States, the 2018 Farm Bill federally legalized CBD that's derived from hemp. And hemp is defined as cannabis that contains less than 0.3% THC. So that means that at the federal level, hemp-derived CBD with less than 0.3% THC is legal. However, and this is a really important caveat, individual states can still have their own laws regarding CBD. And these laws can be more restrictive than federal law. So what might be legal at the federal level could still be subject to additional regulations or even be prohibited at the state or local level. So it's always really important to check the specific laws in your area.
So federal legalization doesn't necessarily mean a green light everywhere. Got it. So let's talk about the different ways that people can actually take CBD. Because I think the variety of product types out there can be a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure. We're talking about oils, tinctures, capsules, edibles, topicals. So what are the main differences between these?
So the main difference between these different product types really comes down to how the CBD is absorbed into your body. And that in turn affects how quickly you might feel the effects and how long those effects last. So for example, oils and tinctures are often taken sublingually, which means you place a few drops under your tongue and hold it there for a short time. And this method allows for fairly rapid absorption of the CBD directly into the bloodstream. Capsules and edibles, on the other hand, are ingested, so they have to go through your digestive system. This means that the onset of effects is usually slower. but they tend to last for a longer period of time.
Okay.
Because the CBD is released more gradually.
Okay.
And then finally, we have topicals, things like creams and balms.
Right.
And these are applied directly to the skin, and they're really designed for localized relief.
Okay.
So if you're having muscle soreness or joint pain,
right,
you can apply a topical directly to that area.
Got it.
And it'll target the CBD to that specific spot.
Okay, so basically it comes down to how fast you need to feel the effects.
Exactly.
And how long you want them to last.
Yeah.
And whether you're targeting a specific area or looking for more of a full body effect.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about how CBD actually works in the body.
Okay.
We've mentioned this term a couple of times, the endocannabinoid system, or ECS. Can you explain a little bit more about what that is?
So the endocannabinoid system is a really fascinating system.
Okay.
It's a network of receptors and neurotransmitters that's found throughout the body.
Okay.
And it plays a role in regulating a wide range of physiological processes,
right, including
things like mood, sleep, appetite, pain, inflammation, and even immune function.
Wow. So it's really involved in a lot.
It is. Yeah. It's a really vital system for maintaining homeostasis or balance in the body.
Got it.
Now, the main receptors in the endocannabinoid system are called CB1 and CB2 receptors.
Okay.
And these receptors can be activated by compounds called cannabinoids.
Right.
Now, our bodies naturally produce our own cannabinoids called endocannabinoids.
Okay.
And these endocannabinoids bind to CB1 and CB2 receptors and help to regulate all those different processes I mentioned.
Okay.
Now, CBD is what we call a phytocannabinoid, which means it's a cannabinoid that comes from a plant, in this case, the cannabis plant.
Got it.
And CBD interacts with the endocannabinoid system in a really interesting way.
Okay.
Unlike THC, which directly binds to those CB1 receptors, CBD doesn't have that same direct binding affinity.
Okay.
Instead, it modulates the activity of CB1 receptors.
Okay.
It can also influence the levels of our own endocannabinoids, essentially helping our bodies use their own natural mechanisms more effectively.
Okay.
And CBD can also interact with other types of receptors in the body that are involved in these various regulatory processes.
So it's not so much that CBD is directly causing a specific effect, as it is helping the body's own systems work more optimally.
Yeah, it's like giving your body a little nudge in the right direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we talked about the different forms of CBD and how they affect absorption. Do they also impact how CBD interacts with the ECS?
Yes, they absolutely do.
Okay.
The way that CBD enters your system really affects its bioavailability, which is a fancy way of saying how much of the CBD actually reaches your bloodstream and is available to interact with the ECS and other targets. So, for instance, when you take CBD sublingually, like with a tincture, it gets absorbed fairly quickly as it bypasses that first pass through the liver, where some of the CBD can be metabolized.
Okay.
When you swallow CBD in a capsule or an edible, it has to go through the entire digestive process. And during that process, a significant portion of the CBD might be broken down before it even gets into your circulation.
Got it.
So you end up with lower bioavailability, but often you get longer lasting effects because it's being released slowly over time.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and then with topicals, they work primarily locally. So they're interacting with cannabinoid receptors and other components in the skin itself.
Okay.
And there's very minimal absorption into the bloodstream.
Okay, so choosing the right form is really important.
It is.
Depending on what you're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's move on to an area that I know a lot of people are interested in.
Okay.
And that is pain management.
Yeah.
The overview you shared really highlights this as a major area where CBD is being explored. So how does CBD potentially help with pain?
Well, research suggests that CBD may help manage pain through several different mechanisms. And these mechanisms are all tied to its interactions with the endocannabinoid system. So as we've discussed, CBD can influence the activity of CB1 and CB2 receptors, which are involved in how we perceive pain. Additionally, CBD has been shown to have anti-inflammatory properties. And inflammation, as you know, is a key driver of many types of pain. And it can also interact with other receptors and signaling molecules that are involved in pain pathways.
So it's kind of like a multi-pronged approach?
It is, yeah. It's not just one thing. It's working on multiple levels.
Okay. And it seems like this could be relevant for all sorts of different types of pain. From, chronic pain conditions like arthritis and fibromyalgia to things like neuropathic pain, which is caused by nerve damage.
Right.
And even just your everyday muscle and joint soreness.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So for chronic pain conditions like arthritis and fibromyalgia, the combination of CBD's potential anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving effects could be really beneficial.
Okay.
For neuropathic pain, which can be really difficult to treat with conventional medications.
Right.
CBD may be able to modulate those pain signals in a way that provides some relief.
Okay.
And then for those everyday aches and pains, especially if you're using topical CBD products, that localized anti-inflammatory action can be really helpful.
Makes sense. Okay. And the overview also drew a comparison between CBD and more traditional pain medications like NSAIDs or even opioids. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So, a lot of people are looking for alternatives to conventional painkillers because they're concerned about potential side effects or the risk of dependence or addiction.
Yeah.
And, NSAIDs, for example, they're effective for pain and inflammation.
Right.
But they can have gastrointestinal risks with long-term use and even some cardiovascular concerns.
Right.
And then opioids, of course, carry a significant risk of addiction and can have other serious side effects as well.
Okay.
CBD, in contrast, is generally considered to have a much milder side effect profile.
Right.
And it doesn't carry the same risk of addiction.
Okay.
So for people who are looking for a more natural approach to pain management, CBD can be a really appealing option.
Okay.
Now, it's important to note that CBD may not provide the same level of immediate pain relief that you would get with a high dose of an opioid, for example, especially for severe pain.
Okay.
And its effectiveness can also vary from person to person.
Right.
But I think it's really about that balance of benefits and risks.
Right. It's not necessarily a direct replacement in every situation.
Exactly.
Okay. And are there certain ways of taking CBD that seem to be more effective for pain?
So for widespread or chronic pain, CBD oils or tinctures taken sublingually might be preferred because they have faster systemic effects.
Right.
Or capsules and edibles could be good options as well because they tend to provide longer lasting relief.
Okay.
And then for localized pain like muscle or joint pain, topical CBD products are usually the way to go.
Okay, so matching the delivery method
to
the type of pain makes sense.
It does, yeah.
Okay, let's move on to another big area of interest.
Okay.
And that is anxiety relief.
Yeah.
How does CBD interact with the body to potentially reduce anxiety and stress?
So research suggests that CBD interacts with serotonin receptors in the brain, and specifically a subtype called the 5-HT1A receptor.
Okay.
And this particular receptor plays a key role in regulating mood and anxiety.
Okay.
Now, interestingly, some of the common anti-anxiety medications, like SSRIs, for example, also target the serotonin system.
Okay.
But CBD seems to influence it in a somewhat different way, and often with fewer reported side effects.
Interesting. So it's targeting the same system, but in a different way.
In a different way.
Okay. And this interaction might be helpful for a variety of different types of anxiety, right?
That's right, yeah.
We're talking generalized anxiety, social anxiety, even PTSD.
Exactly. So for generalized anxiety disorder, CBD may be able to help calm that kind of persistent worry and nervousness that people experience. In the context of social anxiety, some studies have shown that CBD can reduce anxiety and discomfort in social situations. And then for PTSD, there's some promising research suggesting that CBD may help manage symptoms like intrusive memories, nightmares, flashbacks, potentially by modulating the brain's fear response.
Okay, and the overview you share mentions some specific findings from studies like benefits at certain dosages for public speaking anxiety. Can you talk about that a little?
Sure. So there have been a number of studies looking at the effects of CBD on acute anxiety. So think about the kind of anxiety you might experience before giving a presentation or a public speaking event. And some of this research has shown that that a single dose of CBD, somewhere in the range of 300 to 600 milligrams, can actually reduce anxiety levels.
Interesting.
In those types of situations.
Okay.
Additionally, there have been reviews of the scientific literature that suggest that CBD shows promise for anxiety disorders in general, and even for insomnia, which is often linked to anxiety.
Right.
But I do have to say that this is still an evolving area of research. Right. And we really need more large-scale, rigorous clinical trials to confirm these initial findings.
Got it.
And to figure out what the most effective dosages are for different anxiety conditions.
Makes sense. And speaking of dosage, the overview you shared mentioned these sort of general ranges. Low, moderate, and high in the context of anxiety.
Right.
What do those actually look like?
So a lower dose of CBD might be somewhere between 10 and 20 milligrams, and that might be appropriate for milder anxiety or for everyday stress.
Right.
A moderate dose would be somewhere in the range of 25 to 50 milligrams, and that could be used for more pronounced anxiety, like social anxiety or generalized anxiety. And then higher doses, like 50 to 100 milligrams or even more, have been used in some research studies for more significant anxiety. But it's really important to emphasize that using those higher doses should really be done in consultation with a healthcare professional who can provide guidance and monitor for any potential effects.
Got it. And it's always good advice to start low and slow.
It is, yeah.
And see how your body responds.
Exactly. Start with a lower dose. See how you feel, and then you can gradually increase if needed.
Okay. Let's move on to another area that I think a lot of people struggle with, and that is sleep.
Yeah.
How might CBD contribute to better sleep?
So there are a couple of ways that CBD might be able to improve sleep quality. One is through its potential to help regulate cortisol levels. Now, cortisol is a hormone that's often referred to as the stress hormone, and it naturally peaks in the morning to help us wake up and feel alert. But if cortisol levels remain elevated in the evening, it can actually interfere with sleep. So CBD may be able to help lower those cortisol levels at night, promoting a more relaxed state that's conducive to sleep. And secondly, some research suggests that CBD might be able to influence other aspects of the sleep-wake cycle. And it may even interact with receptors that are specifically involved in promoting sleep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And the overview that you shared made a point of comparing CBD to traditional sleeping pills.
Right.
So what are some of the key differences there?
Well, one of the biggest differences is that CBD is generally considered to have a much lower risk of dependence and addiction compared to many prescription sleep aids. The side effects associated with CBD also tend to be milder, often things like slight drowsiness, whereas sleeping pills can sometimes cause more significant side effects like grogginess, cognitive impairment, even rebound insomnia when you stop taking them. And importantly, CBD is generally considered safer for long-term use than many prescription sleep medications, which are often recommended for short-term use only.
Because of those potential issues.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a pretty compelling argument, I think, for exploring CBD as a potential sleep aid.
I think so.
And for someone who's interested in trying it for sleep, are there certain times of day or methods of taking it?
Yeah. So for sleep, I would say taking CBD oil or a tincture about 30 to 60 minutes before you plan to go to bed can be effective because it's absorbed relatively quickly. CBD gummies or other edibles might take a little bit longer to kick in, maybe around an hour before bedtime because they need to be digested. And some people also find that incorporating CBD into a relaxing nighttime routine, like having a cup of CBD-infused tea, can be really beneficial.
Okay, so it really comes down to personal preference and how quickly you want those effects. Okay, let's talk about inflammation. You touched on this a little bit in relation to pain. But I want to dig into it a little bit more. So how does CBD work specifically to reduce inflammation in the body?
So CBD primarily exerts its anti-inflammatory effects through its interactions with the endocannabinoid system, specifically by influencing CB2 receptors. Now, these CB2 receptors are particularly prevalent in the immune system. And by interacting with these receptors, CBD can help to modulate the release of pro-inflammatory molecules called cytokines.
Got it.
And by reducing the levels of these cytokines, CBD can help to alleviate that underlying inflammatory process.
So it's kind of like turning down the volume on the inflammation.
Yep. Okay.
And there are a lot of health conditions that are characterized by inflammation.
Yeah.
We're talking things like arthritis, autoimmune disorders like lupus and Crohn's disease.
Right.
Even muscle recovery after exercise.
Yeah.
So all of these things could potentially benefit.
They could, yeah.
From CBD's anti-inflammatory effects.
So, for example, with arthritis, the inflammation in the joints is a major cause of pain and stiffness.
Right.
And CBD's anti-inflammatory properties could potentially provide some relief. In autoimmune disorders, where the immune system is attacking the body's own tissues, CBD may be able to help dampen down that excessive immune response. Okay. And for athletes or anyone who engages in regular physical activity, CBD could help to reduce post-exercise muscle soreness and inflammation.
Okay, and so as with pain, it seems like the way that you take CBD might be important for targeting inflammation.
Yeah.
So when would you choose a topical product versus an oral product?
So if you're dealing with localized inflammation, like if you have arthritis in a specific joint, or if you have a muscle group that's sore after a workout, a topical CBD product is usually going to be the best choice because you're applying it directly to the affected area, and that allows the CBD to work right where it's needed. Now, if you're dealing with more systemic inflammation, where the inflammation is more widespread throughout the body, then an oral CBD product, like a capsule or an oil,
is usually going to be a better option because that allows the CBD to enter the bloodstream and exert its effects more broadly.
So again, matching the delivery method to the type of issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about skin health.
All right.
This might be a surprising one for some people.
Yeah.
But the overview you shared suggests that CBD can be really beneficial for skin conditions like acne, psoriasis, eczema.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah. So how does it work?
So CBD has a really unique combination of properties that make it beneficial for the skin. It's anti-inflammatory, it's antibacterial, and it's also an antioxidant. And all of these properties can help to address a variety of skin concerns.
So, for example, with acne, which is often caused by a combination of excess oil production bacteria and inflammation, how does CBD help?
So CBD can actually help to reduce the production of oil in the skin.
It can combat the bacteria that contribute to acne. And it can also calm those inflammatory responses. And then for conditions like psoriasis and eczema, which are characterized by inflammation, itching, and a disrupted skin barrier, CBD can help to soothe the inflammation. It can reduce the itching, and it can actually help to promote healing of the skin. And you mentioned antioxidant properties. So how do those play a role in skin health?
Antioxidants are really important for protecting the skin from damage caused by free radicals. Now, free radicals are these unstable molecules that can damage skin cells and contribute to signs of aging and other skin problems. And CBD, being an antioxidant, can actually help to neutralize those free radicals and protect the skin from that damage. So it's like a little shield for your skin.
And in terms of product types, are there specific types of CBD skincare products?
That are recommended for different conditions.
So for acne-prone skin, or for areas where you have a lot of redness, a lightweight CBD face serum is often a good option. For dry or irritated skin, a CBD-infused moisturizer can be really helpful because it provides hydration and helps to soothe the inflammation. And then for more stubborn or inflamed patches of skin, a CBD balm can be really beneficial because balms typically have a higher concentration of CBD and a richer texture. So they can really target those problem areas.
So it seems like there's a CBD product for just about every skin issue.
It seems like it,
moving on, let's talk about heart health.
All right.
The overview that you provided suggests some potential benefits for cardiovascular health, particularly in relation to blood pressure.
Right.
So how does CBD potentially impact blood pressure?
So there's some early research suggesting that CBD might be able to help lower blood pressure.
Okay.